Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Marin Mandir, writer and director of this film, and I will be accompanying you for this audio commentary. This first scene that we are seeing was actually the last scene shot in the end of August 2021. So it was not in the script, I just came up with it. It's kind of very stylistic that he's coming towards you, Vieran is coming towards you, you think he's going to say something, and then the real narrator, Zorko Sirtic, opens the door, kicks in, and shows that he's actually, in a twist, the real narrator. So Zorko Sirtic, I wanted to work with him for a very long time, and I was thinking how to write a role for him. And initially, when I offered the role to him, he was kind of reluctant because he told me he doesn't have a good voice for a narrator. But I disagree. I think he actually has a pretty great, very charismatic and very soothing voice. And the illustrations we are seeing are actually from the real, allegedly real, dancing plague from 1518 that happened in Strasbourg, allegedly, where people were dancing for weeks and then died from exhaustion, and people had to restrain those dancers to finally help them end the dancing plague. And that was pretty funny to me. So I remembered watching that and it stuck in my head. And browsing through the history of the world, I look at various others pandemics. One was Tanganyika laughter epidemic that happened allegedly in 1962 in well, what is it then, Tanzania, where allegedly also there was a sort of mass hysteria, or allegedly categorized by scholarly uh, consensus as a mass psychogenic illness, where allegedly people were laughing. Um, so students were laughing in that area for days, and people didn't know why they were laughing so much. So that was the basically um, inspiration to start writing this film. And of course, after the pandemic happened, the 2019 COVID-19 pandemic, which engulfed the entire world, where the virus, coronavirus COVID-19, spreads throughout the six inhabited continents in 3 or 4 months, and in 2 years killed 5 million people. Well, I said, okay, I have to do this now because the time is right, the time is ripe. We need to do a movie about the pandemic. So all the movies that were made about the COVID-19 pandemic were not popular. People were avoiding them. They were very box office poison because people were too depressed to watch this on the big screens. So I actually decided to do an inversion of doing a comedy about this, one of the most traumatic events that happened during my lifetime, this COVID-19 pandemic. So hopefully it turned out right. So Ivo Reda was great in this scene. He was laughing brilliantly. And he told me, I asked him, do you want the mattress when you fall down? And he said, no, I don't need a mattress. If there's one thing I can do good, one of the things I can do good is I can fall down from the chair. And he actually fell down on the bottom, on the floor, without any pillows, without any mattresses. And so I decided to only make two scenes from with him doing that because obviously for physically it was very dangerous for him to do. But he actually fell twice, and the pillow that falls on him was kind of a cherry on the cake. So he did this role brilliantly, and remember this scene because he shows up later in the scene in the movie when he actually one of those contrarians who stopped the pandemic. And this is the first scene we actually shot. The pigeon mass hysteria, which causes the pandemic of laughter. And Zoran Mikovic and Tena Pataki were basically the people who made this film because when we started doing this first scene, it was like a test scene. So I was afraid that the people would laugh in a bad way. So I hate a fake laugh. So I was just wondering, can these actors laugh on cue and make it feel genuine, authentic? And they did it. So Zoran and Tena Pataki, they were really brilliant. They set the tone for the film, and the film managed to be made thanks to them because their laughter was basically like a prototype for all other laughters. And they were so genuine, they were so funny. It was a joy watching this. So this film crew behind the screens, behind the scenes, we were kind of chuckling throughout. We were holding it in because laughing is very contagious. And obviously, I was not able to do a lot of takes because it's physically very demanding to laugh. It exhausts you extremely, especially when you have to laugh for like 3 minutes. But it was great. They did it with bravura. So this is the third funniest sequence in the entire film for me. And Tena Patak really has a great idea. So this is a, like heavy breathing, so hysterical laughter, her movements. She really knows how to react and to find what to do with the role given to her. So this is the moment where actually they're the first casualties of this laughing pandemic, and the pigeons are still fighting, of course. Now this is a long scene where it's basically a satire on modern influencers doing their vlogs, doing nonsense, basically, and kind of amusing to see how the laughing pandemic raises them to the ground as well as a collateral. I love this smiley face added here with in the background. So Zdenka Shustic really did a great job, but as I said, it's very extremely difficult. So when you're doing a film, you can do several takes, of course. You do, I don't know, somewhere between dozen, 20, 30 takes. But when you're doing some physically exhausting scenes, it's very difficult for the actor and actress to enact it in several takes. So I don't know when you're crying or when you're doing something physically difficult, like running or fighting, so you cannot do 30, 40 takes about that, doing that because it's very difficult. And one of the problems was doing a good laugh and doing a retake, so several takes to do this good laugh. But luckily, I was able to do it pretty good. So I was extremely satisfied with the way these laughing tracks and the way actors were laughing in the end. And this is basically a real event. So, Fish Called Wanda in 1988, Ole Benson, a guy from Denmark, actually was watching Fish Called Wanda and died from laughter. And so basically now we're in a quandary from judicial perspective. Can the author John Cleese be indicted for murder for killing someone from laughing too hard? So that was pretty amusing to have it in this film. And the era of isolation, that's basically kind of like chapter one for this pandemic really setting in and to seeing these consequences for these people. So this is a scene that was kind of shortened in the editing room, the editing process. It was longer. He was talking with another actress who is later seen, Ostrosic. He was supposed to have this longer scene with her, but basically it was kind of too long, so we had to move it on with this movie. And Zorko Sirtis here gives a very authoritative performance, walks over by a dead man, and then turns around to look in the camera, and this is kind of stylish how he turns away and just walks away with from left to right. It's kind of aesthetically very pleasant seeing this kind of scene. So I really was very amusing how stylistic it looks like. And this is an allegory, of course, on medical masks, which became mandated in, well, spring 2020. So people had to wear face masks, and this is kind of like an allegory that they have to wear tracks of paper on their cheeks to see if someone is laughing or not. So if someone laughs, the paper will bend. So the paper has to be straight. The paper lines have to be straight for this these sanitary interventions to work. So this is kind of very aesthetic the way this scene looks like. I was very stylistically pleased with this wide shot, almost fisheye lens, the way my character Mate ends in this interrogation room, and the inspector is interrogating him to see if there's if he's maybe contaminated by the laughing pandemic. And this was basically my second, for me personally, so the second funniest sequence in this entire film. So not there's not a specific moment that I can pinpoint that's uh, the thing that makes it so funny to me, but the cumulative effect from all those video clips that he's forced to watch on the laptop, it's kind of what gives me the funny vibes that that I really thought it was very funny. So from this audio that fans of Pedro Almodovar are called pedrophilia. So I'm a Pedro Almodovar fan, pedrophilia, from the Pillow Guy through the Uncle Buck parody with Uncle Schmuck up to the rooster fighting a turkey. So that was all those weird Monty Python like or Saturday Night Live like sketches, which kind of have a cumulative effect in the end that makes this scene, this sequence, sorry, very funny to me. Peter Scheller gives a very good inspector here. He's very authoritative, very strict, and this is kind of, in a way, homage to The Life of Brian, the Monty Python movie, where the biggest dickest sequence where they're trying to make him laugh, but he's trying to not laugh at all. So it's kind of like homage to that. And the sequence following this is the one with Jeremy Shower playing a Cordo, playing one of those health minister associates who is trying to suppress the pandemic, and but he spits while talking. And while he is doing that, someone gives him a cup of chocolino. So this is basically like a cacao drink. And when he takes a sip, he says everything has to be hygienic. And the way he says hygienic, he spits it out on his assistant. So basically, when I gave the script, I actually wrote that in the script, and when I gave it to Neven Dujanets, he asked him, "Okay, that's too much, right? I have to cut it out from this script, right?" And then he was actually, no, no, you have to keep it because, in his opinion, the movie was the weakest when it was the truth, when it was actually the closest to truth. So it was very about reality, about especially those politicians and economic upheavals in the script. But he thought these Monty Python like sequences with spitting, especially, were the thing that actually gives a dissociation from reality and makes us comfortable while watching this kind of very uncomfortable realities in the pandemic. So basically, okay, I said when we were doing this, we had a closed set, and I told my cameraman and my assistant, so I don't know how we're going to film this scene. I don't know, but I'm doing it. So we decided to close the set, and we had Jeremy Shower, Mladen Klaric, shot reverse shots, and as you see, he actually takes a sip and then spits it on him. And for me, this is the funniest sequence in the entire film, number one, because I don't know why. I actually haven't got a clue why it works, because it was very controversial. I didn't know if I'm going to keep it in the film, but after it was finished in the editing process, I actually had tears in my from laughter. I was laughing so hard. I think I dislocated my kidney. So the way he says that, and he spits on him, and then the reverse scene is, oh, he spits out half a gallon of chocolino, but in the next scene, oh, his face is completely clean, and his assistant is like filled with chocolino, and he goes, and that grin is what makes it so funny. And the delay, the subtlety from the delay when he laughs and gives a grin. So he's completely wrong guy for an pandemic since he spits while talking. And the continuation of this sequence is the narrator talking how Kordov was arrested for spitting out the Chocolino and sentenced for bioterrorism. Then he cracks and laughs himself. So that was like uh, almost like the narrator is going to be contaminated himself. The sequence when we saw the two women passing by a dead body of casualty from the pandemic is basically a recreation of the famous scene from Kiev where a woman was walking past a dead man from Holodomor. They had this great sequence with Diana Diviak, who is a great actress, and I really enjoyed working with her. So she gives this role, which was of politicians, scrambling how to react to this pandemic when everything is going wrong, when they're in in government. And this role was supposedly very, very straightforward, very conventional, but she made it so refreshing, so funny, and so effervescent that you have to enjoy watching it. Her smile, her charm, her looks, and the way she interacts with Peter Scheller was really wonderful. So it was great having her. And the way this was a very great sequence that lifts up the movie for me. And Katarina Shestic now plays the episodic role here when in a reporter during another take with interview with another politician. And this is done with the legendary Veno Mushinovic, who I've respected and very adored for a long time now. And we did this take in three different ways. So the first one was he did one, Veno had one accent, it's the Bosnian accent. Then he did another take with hillbilly accent, and they were both very funny. But he decided to do a third take in a completely serious and completely impeccable manners, like speech. And I thought this third one, this sophisticated, subtle talk about how patriotism is the solution to everything, is was basically my favorite part because I don't know. I thought the sophistication, the subtlety, the way he told it was the best, and so we kept this third. Um, the third take in the movie. And this is now something like a surreal sequence where the camera is closing in on the narrator, but he just keeps disappearing in the background to show something like Neon Genesis Evangelion surreal style, to show how you don't know if the camera is now being sick or if you get this feeling of disease in psychological manner. The third, this third sequence where the people are basically collapsing from laughter was done with in a joke that I wanted to do before. I didn't know where to put it in which movie, so I decided to put it in this film because I thought it fits. So we had this one scientist, the second scientist, the third scientist, who would all do great deeds if you would they would just live for 10, 20 years. You know, they would invent warp or they would invent the cure for multiple sclerosis and etc. But they didn't do anything with that because they all died from the incident, which is going to show up in half a minute. So someone is going to tell a joke and they're going to collapse from the pandemic of laughter. Luka Ostojic, also a Kino Club member, was in this, and they were all really, really great. So I was really surprised how well it worked out. I mean, from as I said, the biggest fear I had was that the laugh was going to be fake. So when someone laughs, ha 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 ha, so that doesn't do it for me. It just doesn't work. It just feels fake. It just feels disingenuous. So I was afraid the movie would look fake, but luckily they could all laugh on cue. So I was very relieved about that. Vieran Pajan does a really great laugh here, and we're all going to watch them slowly succumb from laughter, which I guess is probably the best way to go, to show how this isn't really just laughing, but it just gets way more dangerous. Just like that, you get a shift in the scene from laughing to suddenly morbid deaths from these two. And we were expecting Vieran to die parallel with them too, but he just thought in this scene, no, I think you have someone would struggle longer from laughter. He wouldn't just die in so fast. He would struggle laughing longer until he would dissolve. So I decided to keep this first stake because I thought it was very funny, and this transition to now obituaries was also very good transition for me. We see Vojko Vornovic again, which to see what happened to them. So yeah, he really is dead, and we have two girls watching this. So I was the idea, the vision was to include as many characters as possible to give the feeling how this pandemic affects the scale of the pandemic, so that you get the impression of the scale of the pandemic and how far away it reaches. So it reaches not only politicians, not only journalists, economists, but also ordinary people here who want to just enjoy watching something funny, because now humor is outlawed. People are afraid to laugh, just as people were social distancing in COVID-19 pandemic and lost a way of actually talking with each other. And so that was my impression. That was my idea, to have this large scale giant cast to show how far reaching this pandemic is and how many lives it affected. And Venom Mushinovic gives a very genius performance here. His authority for comedy is great. So a movie about a pandemic, which says how dangerous. Uh, it's a movie about pandemic of laughter, telling about how dangerous laughter is, and it just makes the audiences laugh from all these kind of crazy and wacky characters. And so Venom Shinovich actually gives here a giant 2 minute monologue in one take. I just inserted quick two shots of the two girls reacting, Eva and Tiana. And he was great doing this, but he didn't quite stick to the script, so he decided to make it his own line. He decided to improvise, and I just let him do that because he's a comic genius. So you just let him do whatever he knows what he wants to do. And actually thought he's this kind of uh, improvisation when he trips over his own feet, like especially when he says, "Oh, when we're watching the comedy in the cinema, they all died, and then they had to disinfect everything, and then they burned the trash, and then they burned the cinema theater." So he was like improvising, and I thought it was actually funnier than the way it was written. It was like he's the kind of guy who takes this funny sequence and manages to do it even funnier. So the funny thing is, while we were filming this scene, one crazy guy showed up behind the wall behind Leno and was shouting and saying, "Why are you filming me?" And the cameraman said to him, "We're not filming you, we're filming our film. Just keep moving." So he kept moving, he went away to the right, and then he came back, actually entered this backyard, and he was screaming again something about sports. And then we calmed him down. Okay, yeah, everything is cool. He just gave us a handshake and just went out right along his way. So crazy episode. And I love this meta film touch where the narrator is returned. The narrator is overturned because he was laughing just a couple of minutes ago, so he must go into the quarantine himself. So the narrator himself is removed and replaced with the second narrator, Tino Turkolja, who is also a genius actor from Rijeka, and he came from Rijeka to Zagreb to film this specific sequence, and then he had to head out back to Rijeka in the evening because he had a play that evening. So it was wow, it was very flattering to have him do this. So he is a very dedicated actor, and I like this where the movie kind of shifts towards a more philosophical contemplation. Okay, everything is pointless. Life is pointless. But a drink is still tasty. A drink is still sweet. And a cookie is still tasty. And poker is still fun. So so the message is even if everything is pointless. Let's take for a minute that everything in life is pointless. Even if that is true, uh, funny is still funny. Touching is still touching. Emotional is still emotional. Uh, a great moment is still a great moment. So even if that is true, it still doesn't remove all those feelings you have throughout your life. So Vieran called it a little bit Hannah and her sister vibe, which I felt very flattering. I'm not going to say that I'm never near that Hannah and her sister level of philosophical contemplation about the meaning of life, but I was very fortunate to hear him say that. So the era of contrarians is basically an educational chapter where we had this strange point in the pandemic where we got the vaccines and all of a sudden a third of all people just doesn't want to take the vaccine and end the pandemic. So it's kind of puzzling, very bizarre. So some reasons were not even an argument, doesn't even reach the level of an argument. And Ivan here in the left is basically a symbol of those contrarians who, whatever the consensus is in the mainstream society, they just want to do the opposites. They're like rebel without a cause. And we're making this kind of course, satire. So when he's saying, I don't want to be controlled by the Kardashians in the microchip, I don't want to be turned into a gremlin. So it's kind of like basically a spoof of it. So it was really puzzling to have this, but this is kind of amusing as you can remember from the opening film where Evo falls down from the chair and dies from laughter. And this is kind of like flash forward. So basically, just a change in time frame where we saw him how he ends, and now we see him how he got there by being a contrarian who doesn't want to get the pill to end the pandemic of laughter. And the Moses from Crete analogy was, I thought, brilliant for me, and it's actually true. So I loved it. I wanted to leave it there. Susanna was great here as a doctor, trying to be the voice of reason to Ivan, but he still doesn't want to listen. So he's now basically just trying to ignore the facts, and it's kind of a form of basically anti-scientific fundamentalism. And Susanna Veronica was very adamant about what to do. Should we say the anti-intellectual fundamentalist or not? She was not sure. She didn't want to say it, but I told him, Snezhana Veronica Kovacic, I'm please just say this anti-intellectual fundamentalist. And Snezhana told it, and it was very good. If there is one scene that I consider the best directed in the entire film, then it's this one. The dissolve to the obituary from the freeze frame. It says absolutely everything without being superfluous. These phases come and go. First phase was isolation and panic. Then the second phase was denial and during the age of contrarians who don't want to accept inconvenient truth. And now we're going to the age towards normal age of reason and relaxation, where people are returning back to normal. The pandemic is ending due to pills of that can help you laugh without dying from laughing too much. And this is also the way the movie kind of slides towards the philosophical in this scene, the longest scene in the entire film, almost 2 minutes long, where they just return back to normal, and they were like waiting. Okay, yes, finally we can get back to normal, our normal, fulfilled lives, and then they realize there's this awkward silence where they realize the life without a goal, life without a struggle is kind of empty. So it's kind of like bizarre commentary on the world. And it was inspired partially by the James L. Brooks As Good as It Gets movie, where he told the sequence where there was one scene where he told him you just need to keep quiet and keep the movie going for being so awkward until it gets more awkward for being just so long. And then I realized I don't have a single scene with Veno, so I decided kind of like to improvise, and this is improvised scene from not in the script, so we had to give it just to have me in the same scene with Veno. So we were working in the previous film, Republic of Bill Murray, and this kind of follows the same structure of a narrator giving a pseudo documentary on what happened through history. So this is now back to the era of normal. Miladin here is Miladin Vasic is doing another role of comedians where everything is slowly getting back to normal. And Nikita Gilic, the legendary film cineast, had a small cameo here. It was great having him in the movie. And Mina Ostrosic as Herzegovina's comedian. We were unsure if we should get Jelimir Shower's character Kordop once back in the film for the one last time. So we decided to keep him because he's just such a cream puff of humor. He was just such a funny character. And he's like the T-Rex from Jurassic Park. We need to bring him back once again for the finale. And now the narrator is getting back, of course, to do this. The way he kind of stumbles was funny to me, but it kept gave that scene a charm and certain uh, genuine feel to it towards it. So I was very satisfied the way this ended. This zoom in towards his eye and then zoom out towards the pandemic of health. So I thought it was very funny. Others didn't think so, but I thought, pandemic of health. I just thought it was very funny to me, and it it was kind of strange wild adventure. We were filming from June to August 2021, but it was very satisfying to me. Almost cathartic in a positive way towards all those depressive and nihilistic pandemic eras. So thank you very much for listening to me. I just love this little touch where the smiley face from the color correction is in the closing credits, and then this photographs and illustrations are here too. So thank you very much for listening, and goodbye. See you next time.